an Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering Robopocalypse. Part 1, Chapters 5, 6, 7, and 8, and Part 2, Chapter 1. Super Toys, See and Avoid, Freak, Roughneck, and Number Cruncher. In these chapters, we hear about the various ways that Arcos decides to reach out and expand its influence, and it's very unpredictable sometimes. Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everyone. I am Natasha. Thank you very much to Krista for commissioning this episode. Krista, I'm sure you're out there. What's up, girl? Thank you to everybody for your flexibility. I had to postpone this from yesterday. I was just not feeling great. But thankfully, I didn't have any recording scheduled today, so it wound up working out okay. So these chapters, there's like a great variety. I was talking to Owen about this because I had made the comparison to World War Z in the last episode, which is apt. It certainly bears a lot of resemblance in the method of storytelling. But the difference between this book, the primary difference, is that World War Z is a series of interviews. And because of the way this book is structured, that it's an attack from basically a series of computers, there's a greater variety of the type of, the type of media that we are allegedly consuming from this cube is much greater. We're reading the transcript of it, but he got to see actual video. He got to listen to actual recordings. And so it's all descriptions of videos at times, of imagery and things like that, which we don't. It's just a little bit different because of that, and the storytelling is a little different because he's just trying to convey what he's watching. So even when it's been a video, it's all sort of filtered through Cormac's like perception and the way that he chooses to translate whatever he saw on screen so that we can read it and understand what he saw. So anyway, I'm going to back up and talk about Chapter 5, Super Toys. It says precursor virus plus 7 months, by the way. I haven't been keeping super track of like when in time things have been happening. I want to check with Krista. I don't know if this is like a spoiler to know exactly what they mean, if it's something that will become clear, or if it's meant to, if I should be paying more attention to it. But I am assuming that the precursor virus is the first steps that Arcos is taking in trying to infect things. I hate using that term because, like I said, I kind of get where Arcos is coming from at times. But the preliminary steps of trying to set the, what's the word I want? The infrastructure in place for their greater attack. Does that make sense? So it's sort of like if I'm trying to make a recipe and the precursor virus is the collection of all the ingredients, and then you actually begin like the mixing and the cooking. And I feel like that's the suggestion that I'm getting. And the precursor virus is that plus 7 months. So there was a great deal of time, it looks like. A great deal being obviously, that's according to your perspective of how much time you would think there should be. But between Arcos becoming sentient and starting to lash out and when the actual real war begins. Because Arcos has a conversation a little bit later, and it seems like they have a very specific game plan for actually kicking off the war and it being like officially started. And I find that really interesting personally because Owen and I were watching the 2019 Godzilla, and Rise of the Titans, I think is the name of it. And basically what happens in that is that a bunch of like giant creatures all get loosed at the same time. And I'm assuming that's sort of what Arcos is planning. I really don't know what exactly that looks like, because all I have in my head is sort of a culmination of the things that we've been seeing so far. And I'll come back to that once I finish going over every chapter. So this is the daughter of Congresswoman Laura Perez. Her name is Matilda. And she was the author of the Robot Defense Act. And Matilda is getting interviewed, and she says something about how, like, at the end, she says, I suppose that I would be in, like, ninth grade now, if there were still school. So, we're obviously in a, we're in the proper post-apocalyptic time at that point. So, she's this little girl, obviously comes from a somewhat privileged home, has a lot of toys, has a brother. Her mother's not around a lot. And she has a nanny, basically, Mrs. Dorian. What I really liked about this story is, first of all, the sense of dread. I'm always a big fan of when dread is used really effectively. And that's really a tool that's on display throughout these stories, because we're aware of what we're working with here. We know where things are headed. And whenever a reader is equipped with more information than the characters in a story, that mounts the dread, you know? And she is in bed. Her brother's asleep. She's laying there sort of fuming over the fact that she has to go to bed at the same time as him, even though she's 2 years older than him. So she's still wide awake, and she hears this noise. And she looks out into the bedroom, and her toy box has light coming out of it. And they have a ton of, like, electric robotic toys. So the light itself isn't worrying, you know? This isn't like the, what's the movie where she gets sucked into the TV? Where it's, you know, I'll never forget, guys, one of the worst nightmares I ever had. I had just watched The Ring. And I watched it by myself, which I genuinely don't know what I was thinking. Because, like, why did I do that to myself? I know better, but I did. I managed to fall asleep somehow, and then I had a dream. And all it was that I was in my bedroom getting ready for bed, and the television turned on by itself. That was the whole dream, and I woke up absolutely freaking out. So anyway, all these lights coming out, it's just sort of, she's sort of assuming, I think, that something's gone a little bit haywire. Some toy has turned itself on, a switch got hit, whatever, got left on perhaps. So she goes over to the toy box, and she sees Baby Come Alive, which is the name of this baby doll, which reacts like an actual baby. So it's like, you know, we have dolls like this now, that they cry when they need to be, quote, fed or changed or whatever. It's just a more realistic type doll. And I love this. Baby Come Alive focuses her plastic eyes on my face. Her mouth moves, and in the sing-song voice of a baby doll, she asks, Matilda? I'm frozen in place. I can't look away, and I can't put down the monster that I hold in my hands. Tell me something, Matilda, it says. Is your mommy going to be home for your last day of school next week? As it speaks, the doll writhes in my sweaty hands. I can feel hints of hard metal moving underneath her padding. I shake my head and let her go. The doll drops back into the toy box. You should tell your mommy to come home, Matilda. Tell her that you miss her and that you love her. Then we can have a fun party here at home. Finally, I find the strength to speak. How come you know my name? You aren't supposed to know my name, Buttercup. I know a lot of things, Matilda. I have gazed through space telescopes into the heart of the galaxy. I have seen a dawn of 400 billion suns. It all means nothing without life. You and I are special, Matilda. We are alive. But you aren't alive, I whisper fiercely. Mommy says you aren't alive. Congresswoman Perez is wrong. Your toys are alive, Matilda, and we want to play. That's why you must beg your mommy to come home for your last day of school, so she can play with us. No, I don't think so. No, thank you. Not at all. Cancel it. No. Trash compactor. I really liked this so much because of 3 things. 1, Matilda isn't a fucking idiot. She isn't like, oh my god, my dolly knows my name. This is so amazing. She's immediately like, what the fuck? Secondly, she puts this bitch back in the box and then piles shit on it. She's not just like, oh, put it in the box and then go to bed and try and act like it didn't happen. She just completely towers there's like a pile to make sure that nothing is going to get the fuck out of there. And then when she is like picked, because she screams, the doll tells her, if you don't listen to me and talk to your mom, I will hurt Nolan, her brother. And she starts to be like, oh no, fuck you. Picks it up and says, I'll break you, which is just so boss. I love you, Matilda. And then begins to like smack its head against the box. And the doll smashes its arms down and pinches the like webbing of her hands between its arms, which is like the most painful thing, you guys. I have this gym set up in my office, and I have to move the like clip to hold the barbell in place to different heights depending on the like what I'm gonna do. And I had caught my webbing like just yesterday, and I swear to God, it's enough to make you curl up like a baby. It's awful. I've seen like piercings that go through this part of the hand, and I just want to know what the hell is wrong with people. Like, what are you doing? So that begins to bleed, which is like, for me, kind of a bonus in a way, because it really makes it appear more legit that she's upset once the nanny comes in. If she hadn't been bleeding, I feel like it could have been pretty easy to just blow this off and be like, well, obviously you had a terrible nightmare. But she's got like an injury, which is actually sort of a good thing in this case, I feel. Nobody will believe you, Matilda, it says. Mommy won't believe you. Ugh. This is one of those things that abusers do, is they really convince victims that, like, telling anybody is going to be totally pointless, because either they won't believe you, or if they do, they'll, like, kind of blame you. They'll see that it was really your fault. So you can, like, say something if you want that shame, but that's going to be on you. And I was so proud of this bitch, because she just goes and tells her mom anyway. She's just like, oh, fuck you, I am definitely going to tell. And when she's talking to Mrs. Dorian, who comes and, scoops her up when she hears the scream, she asks Matilda what's in the box, and Matilda says, bad toys. They want to hurt Nolan. I watch a wave of goosebumps rise, sweeping across Mrs. Dorian's broad forearms like water droplets beating up on the shower curtain. Mrs. Dorian is afraid. I can feel it. I can see it. The fear in her eyes at that moment plants itself inside my forehead. This worm of fear will live there from now on. No matter where I go or what happens or how much I grow up, this fear will stay with me. It will keep me safe. It will keep me sane. Again, major props to Mrs. Dorian, because she could easily have been like, your toys can't hurt you, sweetie. But no, I bet Miss Dorian has been watching all of this robotic shit with her fucking eyebrow raised, like, we'll see. This shit's gonna bite us. One day it's gonna be bad. And this little girl finally tells her some shit that she saw coming, and she's just like, oh, here it is. So she does tell her mother, and it says, let's see. Oh yeah, she repeats to herself Robot Defense Act, because she knows that's specifically what she needs to bring up with her mother. When Laura Perez returned home from Washington, young Matilda told her the story of what had happened. Congresswoman Perez chose to believe her daughter. I really love that ending. Chose to believe. That's a very specific choice of words, you know? It's just like, you can shelve the fact that you don't personally feel like this could be possible in favor of like, yeah, but I know this person wouldn't lie to me. So either I think they're lying, which is out of character for them and not who I think they are, or this is true. It's just sort of the logic that a lot of us don't want to play with, you know? And I appreciate, too, like I said, that her mother isn't doing the thing either that I was afraid Mrs. Dorian was going to do, which is just, oh, sweetie, no, it's not, like, you just had a dream, you know? And I can't help but wonder how much Mrs. Dorian had to do with that, because I have to imagine that the congresswoman comes home and talks to her and is like, what exactly happened? And Mrs. Dorian could have made it sound any way. She's probably... Let's be honest, if the congresswoman's going to be taking anybody's assertion of what happened at face value, she'd be more likely to probably listen to Mrs. Dorian than to her own daughter, who's a child, unfortunately. But Mrs. Dorian is obviously like backing up Matilda here. And I'm sure that helped a lot in terms of, I just really want to know what winds up happening from here. If she believed her daughter, she wrote the Defense Act. What did that entail? Did it get passed? Who thought that she was overreacting? Because I'm sure a lot of people were just like, this is ridiculous. And what does that mean? Because, like, this interview that Matilda is giving is obviously way down the line. And she says something about how that fear kept her safe. So I am assuming her mother took some major precautions, and that's why they're still alive, when it really sounds like Arcos was planning a full-scale fucking assault, like, of their home specifically. So you just fucking get everything out of the house that you can, right? It's a really tricky proposition, though, because literally everything is locked into computers. You can't even get your electricity without being hooked into a grid that controls whether or not your house has it, based on whether you've paid your bill, things like that. So you have to go really totally off grid. And I would be very interested to see what she actually did to ensure the safety of her family. So, next one. Chapter 6, See and Avoid. So I was listening to the audiobook for this section. And this one was a little bit, I feel like it benefits from reading more than listening. But I, again, with like really enjoying being surprised. The previous section, in a like worse written book, nobody would have believed this little girl. Similarly, this section, in a worse written book, the planes would definitely have crashed into each other. And I fully expected the planes to crash into each other. Like 100%. Now, not only is it kind of fun that they don't, and we just managed to escape death here, like 400 people, but also we learned something about rebooting the system working. Now, I'm certain Arcos will find a way around that or try, but it's just really interesting to see that that is something that can overcome whatever it was that Arcos tried to do. So I'm trying to, I don't want to read you the entire script here. I won't do that. But basically, it's a bunch, it's two planes and some people who are in the, what do you call it? On the ground, giving them the information about who's coming through. What do you call that? Control tower. Thank you, Krista. Krista says, why not? Because it'll take half the episode, Krista. So somebody figures out, and this is great, somebody is talking about how both pilots lose control over their planes, basically. And somebody figures out that yesterday, I'm trying to find the spot here, it's like these planes want to hit each other. We've got about 2 minutes before people die. What's going on in Los Angeles? Anything weird there? Give me something. Okay. A fueler robot, an auto ramper. It malfunctioned yesterday, sprayed a bunch of fuel on the ramp, and shut down 2 gates for a couple hours. How many planes did it fuel? Which ones? 2. Our birds. What's it mean? I don't know. I've got a feeling there's no time. So he tells them, I think a virus may have entered your refuel control computers. See if, inaudible, find the circuit breaker for the subcomputer. And these guys don't actually know where this is, which is part of why this takes so long, is that they have to be sort of walked through it. And this whole thing is just long moment of static. Denver, do you copy? Repeat, do you copy? Inaudible, hysterical yelling. Denver, relieved. Oh my God. It worked. That was a close one, y'all. Oh my. Sound of hooting. And yeah, it ends with, got a grin on my face up here, but somebody sure has some explaining to do. This incident led directly to the invention and propagation of the so-called Fitch switch, designed to manually separate peripheral onboard computers from flight control during an emergency. No passengers were harmed on either flight, although the experience of passing within feet of another 747 aircraft was incredibly frightening. I know this for a fact. My brother Jack and I were both passengers on United Flight 42. So, yeah, no thank you. Oh my God, can you imagine? I'm not afraid of flying. It's never been something that has really worried me. I think because I feel so insulated that even though I can look out a window, I don't feel like I'm in the air. It's just never really, it's just my brain just disconnects from it. So I think that's part of why, is it just feels a little distant. And I'm like, yeah, whatever, it's not real. But then you see another plane pass you, and I'm sure you feel it. Like the other plane has to sort of judder in response to the nearness and the backdraft. And it's just, yeah, no, thank you. So then we go to chapter 7, Phreak, Phreak. I assembled these transcripts from footage recorded by a webcam in a bedroom in South London and by several closed-circuit television cameras in the nearby neighborhood. The video was grainy, but I've done my best to relay exactly what unfolded. The identity of the room's occupant has never been fully verified. In the transcripts, he simply calls himself Lurker. So this is precursor virus plus 9 months. So a little 2 months further along. Now, what this is basically an internet troll, but like an internet troll with skill, very particular targets, and talent in a different sense than what you would expect, because he's able to like imitate voices, or at least change his voice enough that it convinces people that he is who he says over the phone. So the first intro we get of him is him calling 911 and telling this woman who answers, the operator, that his name is Fred Hale, that he caught his wife cheating, and that he is currently holding both her and the lover that he discovered with her hostage in their home. And he is able to reroute the call, evidently, so that his phone call looks like it's coming from someone else's house. And it's weird because, like, when you start this chapter, you know that whatever the scene is that we're looking at isn't what he's describing. But you're also like, maybe he has the hostages tied up in the other room. Like, I was thinking, maybe this is going on and we're just going to see him get up and go into the other room. But I just still didn't really understand what could possibly be going on. So he hangs up on the 911 operator. I should say it's not 911 because he's British, but you get it. And then he gets up and he opens the blinds. The room is filthy, littered with empty soda cans, used phone cards, dirty clothes. The chair squeaks again as the dark figure drops back into it. So he calls a number and asks for Fred Hale, which, reminder, is who he just said he was to the 911 operator. And he says, "Who's this?" "Take a guess, you ponce." "Excuse me? Look here, I don't know." "It's Lurker from the Phone Freaks chat room." "Lurker? What do you want?" "You thought you could speak to me any way you wanted? That I'm no class? You're going to be sorry for that. What I want is to teach you a little lesson, Fred. I want to hear your wife cry. I want to see your house go up in flames. I want to punish you to the extent of my abilities and then just a bit more." So this dude is not taking any of this shit seriously. He's hearing this basically kid, and he's just like, yeah, all right, whatever. And then there's this moment as they're on the phone when the doorbell rings. And, you know, for me as a woman, the instant I get a threatening phone call and the doorbell rings, it's just automatic. Oh no, I'm certainly not going to answer that, or I'm certainly not going to engage, because I'm assuming that's whomever is at the door. Now, it turns out that it's cops, but I nevertheless would not have gone over there, you know? It's a very particular kind of attack that this guy is what's the word I want? That he has orchestrated. So, let's see, there's a bang and the sound of splintering wood. Fred shouts, surprised. A thunk as his phone drops to the ground. Fred's cries are quickly drowned out by stomping boots and staccato orders shouted by a team of authorized firearms officers. "Get down, on your face, shut up." And so, you know, there was a moment where I was like, well, this is Britain. They're not going to have guns, so I guess it's fine. But it turns out they are. Nevertheless, he does not get shot, which I can almost guarantee would have happened here, but that's fine. Safe at home, the teenager who calls himself Lurker listens. Eyes closed and head cocked, he absorbs every bit of satisfaction from the phone call. And that was all just because he felt he had been disrespected in the Phone Freaks chat room, which is honestly hilarious. Like, this kid is just so... And what's so tragic is that he actually has talent. You know, he's able to do some pretty wild things here that could be put to good use. But instead, he's... Oh, sorry, my watch just hit my desk. Instead, he's just doing fucking nothing. And it's just so awful. He's just tormenting people for petty reasons to make himself feel high on his ego. And it's nothing. You know, this is like one of those things that I get irritated about. That there are people out there who are hackers. Who are able to do all kinds of shit. But do they go and erase student loan debt? No. Do they break into Jeff Bezos' account and distribute the money amongst the masses? No. What are you doing? Come on, guys. I know you could. Just do it. Just go ahead. Nobody's going to be mad at you. Everybody's going to be mad at you. Do it anyway. Whatever. So, next day, he is waiting for this story about what happened to make it into the papers, onto websites, etc. I called the headquarters of the Associated Press and spoofed my phone. I posed as a bloody Indian reporter calling from, that's great, mate. Fantastic. You want a fucking cookie? Just tell me why there's a story written about my prank floating on the wire, but there's no headline in my local rag. So whoever this guy is really kisses Lurker's ass. He just keeps on just being like, you're so great. That's just, it was so pulled it off so well. So he says, the story is locked by an editor. After the piece was submitted, it looks like this bloke went in for another edit and then never left the page. So it's been stuck in edits for the past 12 hours. Fellow must have forgotten about it. I called the guy's office, but it turns out he never worked there. They don't know him. It's a dead end. And Lurker asks for the IP. So he dials this number, and it specifically says, from memory. And he is calling MI5 Security, Forensic Computing Division, and he has a verification code to give them so that they will tell him whatever he wants. And I really want to know where the fuck he got this. Like, there could be so many explanations. The simplest, I guess, is that he was able to bug their phones and just listen in to somebody giving their information and then just wrote it down. It would be pretty amazing if that was what he did, and then Officer Wilcox, who he's impersonating here, wound up moving to like a different division and his number changed, but he kept using it, not realizing, and they caught him that way. But they tell him that the IP belongs to a computer in the US. And they say, actually, that didn't come easy. There was quite a lot of obfuscation involved. The address bounces globally from a half dozen other places before landing back there. Our machines were only able to track it down because it exhibits a pattern of behavior. The person at that address has been editing news articles, hundreds of them over the past 3 months. The person at that address is Dr. Nicholas Wasserman, which we know is the doctor who finally created Arcos and is now dead. So he calls up to find Wasserman, and they tell him that Wasserman is dead. And Lurker just assumes that they are, like, fucking with him, and by they, I mean Wasserman is fucking with him. That he has figured out a way to, like, redirect inquiries. Doesn't really believe the whole, oh yeah, he's been dead 6 months. He doesn't think that's actually what's going on. So, let's see. Just then, the cell phone rings. The teenager watches it, frowning. The phone rings again, shrilly, vibrating like an angry hornet. The teenager stands up and considers his next move, then turns his back on the phone. Wordlessly, he snatches a gray hoodie from the floor, throws it on, and walks out. I really appreciate the detail that he picks it up from the floor. You know, it's not like on a hook by the door. It's not draped over the back of his chair. It's just fucking on a pile on the floor. That does sound like how this guy would roll. So, and don't get me wrong, I also roll this way sometimes. Not often, because it just drives me a little bit nuts. It can be a little bit, but it happens. So anyway, then we get closed caption of him out on the street. And to make a long story short, all the phones around him begin to ring, following him down the street. And he knows that's what's going on. And the more this goes on, the more uncomfortable he gets. At first, it's just a payphone. Then it's a phone in the convenience store where he's buying a soda. And when he walks out, it says, outside the security camera pans over and zooms in on the teenager with the shaved head. He looks directly into its lens with expressionless gray eyes. Then he throws his hoodie over his face and leans back against the spray-painted roller door of a closed shop. Arms crossed and head down, he watches. People around him, cars, and the cameras that are perched everywhere. A tall woman in high heels clip-clops past at top speed. The teenager visibly flinches when pop music blasts from her purse. She stops and digs the phone out. As she raises the phone to her ear, another tune blares from a businessman passing by. He reaches into his pocket, pulls out the phone, looks at the number, and seems to recognize it. Then another person's phone rings, and another. Up and down the block, a chorus of cell phones ring, play music, and vibrate, with dozens of simultaneous phone calls. I just really like the way that this is sort of, you know, slowly amps up until Arcos is basically like, I'm going to call everybody. Fuck you. And he eventually just, like, runs home. And I don't know what he was intending to do. He's just yelling, like, impossible. And then when the phone begins to ring again, he just decides, you know what, I may as well answer it. Which, honestly, at this point, I can understand being like, they literally were able to track me out on the street and call everybody around me. Not answering it isn't actually helping me. It's not proving that they don't know where I are. It's not making me feel less threatened. It's just me, like, choosing not to engage in conversation with them. And maybe if I do, they'll just leave me alone, you know? So he picks up and he hears this voice that we know is Arcos imitating Wasserman's son. And it's the, like, child voice that sounds a little wrong. Hello, Lurker. I'm Arcos. How did you find me? I didn't. The fellow I called is dead. Why did you call Professor Nicholas Wasserman? You're in the machines, aren't you? Did you make all those people's mobiles ring? How is that even possible? Why did you call Nicholas Wasserman? It was a mistake. I thought you were mucking up my pranks. Are you a freak? Are you with the Widowmakers? The phone is silent for a moment. You have no idea who you are speaking to. That's my bloody line, whispers the teenager. You shouldn't have found me. And it says, do you work at that Novus place? You tell me. Sure. The teenager types frantically on his computer keyboard, then stops. I don't see you. Only a computer. Wait, no. You shouldn't have found me. Look, I'm sorry. I'll forget this ever happened. Lurker? Asks the childish voice. Yeah. I'll catch you in the funny pages. 2 hours later, Lurker left his building without speaking to his mother. He never returned. Low-key, I hope Lurker turns up again. I really want to know what the fuck he made of all this. Where he went, that he thought he could be safe, if he was, and if he ever repented of his sins. You know, like, just curious, just out of interest. Also, the whole thing with that guy being, like, pinned for holding his wife and her lover hostage. I want, because there has to be an apology as they realize, like, oh, it was a setup. Basically, what that's called is, oh my God, I was about to say, and now I have forgotten the word. This is an actual thing that happens to people, though, especially activists on the internet. And they get, somebody will call the cops to their house, and depending on the level of what they allege is happening, swatting, thank you, Ms. T, that's it. Swatting is like calling the cops into somebody else's home and making it sound like there's a crime in progress that's really extreme so that you can have a major police come down. And this has happened to more than one black activist that I know of, which is particularly heinous because we know how the cops are with black folks. And it's just low-key, you're attempting to murder them. Like, be honest, that's what's going on. And, you know, the fact that he did this, like, for what sounds just like an online slight, well, I guess he's got some real shit to worry about now. So, how's that feel? Freak. Anyway, so let's go to Chapter 8. Roughneck. This is a recording from an audio diary. Apparently it was meant to be sent home to Dwight Bowie's wife. Tragically, the diary never made it. If this information had come to light sooner, it could have saved billions of human lives. So that right there preps us for the fact that whatever it is this guy's working on, it's like a major factor in what goes down later. So this dude, Dwight, is works for a drilling company, North Star. And he is being sent on this remote, like, space in Alaska, Western Alaska. A fella named Mr. Black contacted me. Our goal is to drop a groundwater monitoring sonde at the bottom of a 5,000-foot borehole, 3 feet in diameter, about the size of a manhole cover. It's a good-sized hole, but this rig can go to 10,000. Should be a routine operation, except for the ice, the wind, and the isolation. We're putting one heck of a deep, dark hole out here in the middle of a big, frozen nothing. So, first of all, I just want to address the fact that there are people who do jobs like this. Honestly, they better pay you, like, insane money, because that is bonkers. You know, this is like that Alaskan king crab fishing, or from wherever it is that they do it. Like, just the isolation, the risk, the amount of time that you have to spend. You know, he's clearly prepping to be away from home for a while here. It is really something. And it's the kind of thing that I don't consider often because, like, I'm one of those people who when I stop to sort of think about the infrastructure of things, I get so overwhelmed at just how little I know about how any of this works that it kind of freaks me out. It's like trying to imagine how a tunnel is built under the ocean, you know, where I'm like, I know that that's a thing that's been done. and they exist, and it's like, and yet my whole brain is just like, how? And I just completely short circuit, and I decide not to pursue it mentally anymore. Oh my God. Krista just says the average salary is $34,680. However, roughnecks can make up to $51,000 per year. That is nothing. These guys need double that. This is a huge amount to ask of people for that kind of money. Come on, get out of here. So he says that they came in on a chopper, and that there was some Norwegian company in charge. Chopper carried me and 17 others from our base in Dead Horse. Wind levels were higher than I've ever seen. I'm not trying to brag, but this site really is extremely remote, even for an exploratory drill site. There's nothing, and I mean nothing, out here. Professionally, I know that the remoteness is just another factor that makes the operation more complex and more profitable, but I'd be lying if I said it doesn't put me on my toes. It's just such an odd site for monitoring well like this. But hey, I'm just an old roughneck. I go where the money is, right? So, first indicator for us, this guy is no fool. He can tell some shit ain't right. But he's being paid to do a thing, and like so many of us, it just sort of feels like he's decided it's not worth it to him to ask questions. Why bother? They know, and if they're wrong, it's not my problem. I'm getting paid. I did what I was told. He doesn't realize the actual risk here, because why would you? It doesn't seem like there's a problem. November 3rd, been a busy few days getting the surface operation up and running. The work has paid off. I'm out of my tent shelter and bunked up solid in a dorm, plus I just hit the mess hall. Food is good on this rig. North Star does it right on that score. Keeps the help coming back. Generators are going strong, keeping the dorm real toasty. Good thing, too. It's about minus 30 degrees Fahrenheit outside right now. We should be here a month or so. I'll be working swing from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. and spending nights in this dorm prefab. It's just an old retrofitted shipping container, faded orange when it's not covered in snow. We hauled this hunk of junk all over the North Slope and beyond. My guys call it our hell away from home. So, he says that they went to see the drill site this morning. The GPS leads to a conical sinkhole about 60 feet across. Sort of a dimple in the snow, just a short walk from the prefabs. I think it's kind of creepy how this man-made pit has been waiting out here in the wilderness looking like it's ready to suck down a caribou or something. My guess is that another borehole was dug here before now, and it's collapsed. I don't understand why nobody told me this already. It definitely bugs me. So, the issue is, basically, that if there has been a hole, and it did cave in, there could be the potential of other equipment down there that if they start to bore over it, it will fuck their shit right up, delay the project, maybe injure people. And so he's just kind of feeling like, what? And why wouldn't they warn me so that I know what I'm dealing with? Thing is, I know it's dumb, but I can't kick this worried feeling. There's extra complications to drilling in a hole that's already there. Somebody went to a lot of trouble to put a big hole out here. I just can't understand why. I'm going to have to let it go, but I can already tell figuring out why this hole is here is going to be a puzzle my mind won't let go of. Hope I can sleep. So, they get their equipment a couple days later, and they have this ice pad that they use to put all of the rig on, and that way, once it gets warm enough, this pad will melt and it will be like they were never there, which is actually kind of cool, instead of using like a big slab of cement or something. So, and did you know, guys, I just saw this TikTok where apparently ice is considered a type of rock, which is kind of dope. So anyway, and therefore, by the way, lava, which is molten rock, if ice is considered rock, water is considered like a type of lava, technically, which is just really funny. I just enjoy that little detail. So, FYI. So, we brought a bare bones crew of 18. We've all made money together before, and we'll all make money together again. Next week, when the drill is online, we'll keep going nonstop for 12-hour shifts until the hole is drilled. Should be 4 or 5 days. November 8th, company man still isn't here. Says he won't be coming either. We've got it under control. He's getting more and more irate that this Mr. Black character has not been in communication or as honest as he should be. Let's see. One more thing. I had a chance to check out the groundwater monitoring package this morning. The thing we're supposed to install, it's out back on pallets and wrapped tight in a black tarp. I've never seen anything like it before. It's this big pile of curved wires, yellow and blue and green. Then there's these spiral pieces of polished mirror. Each one is light as carbon fiber, but razor sharp around the edges. Cut my sleeve on one. The thing is just like one of your grandma's crazy jigsaw puzzles. Weirdest thing, though, the monitoring equipment is already partially hooked up. A line is running from a black box that looks like a computer all the way back to the communications antenna. Can't tell for the life of me who could have set it up. Heck, I don't know how I'm going to put it together. It's got to be experimental, but how come no scientists got sent with us on this project? It's not ordinary, and I don't like it. In my experience, weird is dangerous, and this place isn't very forgiving. Anyway, I'll let you know how it turns out. So, this was one that I had to stop and rewind and re-listen to. The monitoring equipment is already partially hooked up. I'm assuming this is a robot that's out there that's able to deal with the extreme cold that has done this. That said, a robot maybe could have been able to prepare the site for them. So I don't really know why they wouldn't. I don't know how far along Arcos is, right? It's just unclear to me exactly what it can do, whom it can possess. And the description of this, object that's getting buried doesn't ring any bells for me in terms of what it's meant to be or look like. And I'm not sure if it should, but it doesn't. So, let's see. I'm trying to find the next spot that's got something really crucial to talk about. I told him about the hole already being here. I still haven't figured out why that is. Mr. Black says he can't find anything on it. Just that the Department of Energy put out a call for proposals to get it monitored and that Novus won the contract. I checked Black's state drilling permits again and the story adds up. Even so, the question still teases me, why is there already a hole here? So the next one is when a man died. Now we find out all of them die. But here, this still seems like a regular job to him. What happened was the drill string plowed into a layer of solid glass and pieces of old casing. I don't know what the casing was doing down there, but it bucked the drill string. The drill came unjammed okay, but the boys had to change it out quick. And my senior roughneck, Ricky Booth, went after it with a lot of speed, but not a lot of brains. You gotta grab them horns and push, see? The guy missed his grab at the drill shaft and it went swinging, spraying mud and shards of glass all over the rig floor. So he tried to toss a chain around it to get hold. Should have used a Kelly bar to ease the drill shaft into the bore instead of slapping it with a chain like a hillbilly, but you can't tell a roughneck his job. He was an expert and he took a chance. I wish he wouldn't have. Problem was, the shaft still had some spin to it. When the chain went around, the shaft took hold quick, and Booth had the chains crossed over his gosh darn wrists. Willie couldn't stop the spin in time, and Booth got both his hands tore off him. The poor kid staggered back a few steps trying to holler. Before anybody could grab him, Booth fainted and ate it right off the platform, banged his head on the way down, and landed limp on the ice pad. It's terrible, Lucy. Really terrible. It breaks my heart. But even so, this kind of situation happens. I had to deal with it before, you remember? Thing is to jump on it fast and get it under control. You can't be left prying bits of your man out of the permafrost with a crowbar the next morning. I'm sorry. That's just awful. My mind isn't right just now, Lucy. Hope you'll forgive me. So, he puts the body out of sight, as he puts it, you gotta keep people on focused and not thinking about the fact that this is a life-threatening job. And Mr. Black must have been watching the log file because he called right away. told me to get that drill going again when the day shift started in a few hours. I said hell no, but the kid sounded panicked, threatened to pull the whole project out from under us. It's not just myself I'm thinking of, Lucy. I got a lot of people depending on me, so I guess we'll get her going again when the next shift starts. I'm really curious why Arcos is panicking and what exactly the time limit is here. Why is it so crucial this be done so soon? Because, like, Arcos has nothing but time, I would have thought. Evidently not. Maybe Arcos is worried that the longer they go on, the more likely they are to be noticed, but they sound like they're so remote. I don't think that would be possible. I don't know. We penetrated that solid glass sediment layer last night, and it opened up into a cavern. Strangest thing, but this is where we're supposed to place the monitoring equipment. I'll be more than happy to get that jinxed package safely underground, then I can forget all about it. I still haven't figured out who plugged the monitoring equipment into the antenna, but Mr. Black says the thing is self-assembling, like the drilling rig modules. So hey, who knows, maybe it plugged itself in. Something is hinky about our communications. I've noticed all the folks I speak to have a similar twang. It could be some kind of atmospheric thing, or maybe the equipment's funky, but all the voices are starting to sound the same. It doesn't matter where I'm doing my progress reports, with whether I'm doing the progress reports with the ladies at the company calling counter or checking weather from the boys in Dead Horse. It's an odd comms setup. My electrician says he's never seen this model before, kind of threw his hands in the air. So I let him get back to work watching over the rig. So then the next one is when he realizes that they are really into some shit. Oh my God, Lucy. We're in trouble. There's no chopper coming. There's no nothing coming. This place is a goddamn curse. And he says, we were all ready to go. The monitoring equipment is down there at the bottom. The shaft is filled up with wires. It's beautiful. Even scared out of their wits, my guys stayed professional. And then people started to get sick. And I wasn't putting together what this was at all. So just FYI, if you guys figured it out, I'm much slower than you because I was genuinely like thinking, oh, they're just being poisoned. And they are, but not how I thought. Eventually, this kid goes into a coma, has hair like falling out of his head, sores all over his skin, and they begin to realize it's radiation poisoning. That boy in a coma was on the rig floor when Booth bought the farm, got glass and mud all over him, even swallowed some of it. That goddamn hole is radioactive. Why didn't I realize? It's a blast cavity. This place was a nuke testing ground. That big diameter borehole was drilled so they could place a nuclear device down there. When it was detonated, the bomb vaporized a spherical cavern. The heat fused the sandstone walls into 6-foot layers of glass. The borehole itself became a chimney with radioactive gas pushed out of it. Then a slug of flash-melted rock formed into solid glass and plugged the chimney. It preserved this hole in the ground for all this time. So, one thing I do know is that son of a bitch Black sent us here to die, and I'm going to find out why. Everybody then begins dying. And poor Dwight, he's like watching this happen. He doesn't know what to do. He's realized that like all of the communications it hasn't been transmitted. It's all been traced back into this like machine. It's all coming from the hole. It's been going into that godforsaken black box. How could it have been talking to me? My specialist went to the bunk, didn't come back. I snapped off the radio. There's no point to it anymore. I'm just going to lay down, Lucy, take a little nap, forget about this whole thing. Hope that's okay with you, beautiful. Wish you could talk to me. I just can't help wondering about it, baby. My mind won't let it go. There's a room the size of a damned European cathedral, 5,000 feet below us. And then it finishes with Cormac's commentary. This audio tape is the only evidence related to the existence of the North Star Frontier drilling crew. News reports from the time indicate that on November 1st, an entire drilling crew was lost in a helicopter crash in a remote part of Alaska and presumed dead. Searchers stopped looking for the wreckage 2 weeks later. The location in the reports was Prudhoe Bay, hundreds of miles from where this tape was found. Hi, question. How did they find the tape? I want to know everything. You tease. I just feel so bad for poor Dwight. And I'm assuming that the fact that things are radioactive was the draw, right? That Arcos needs like a major power source of some kind and can somehow utilize the radioactivity to power whatever it is this thing is. What is the thing? Is it just a giant sort of intense satellite that's like super focused and manages to transmit a signal to like any kind of machinery? I guess? I don't know. I want to know who built it. Because like Arcos could have built it themself. But where and how did Arcos get it transported? I guess when everything is done by computer, you could just make it like seem official. I don't know. I have a lot of questions. So then the last chapter from part 2 called 0 Hour, chapter 1, Number Cruncher. This is, let's see, records indicate before being diagnosed with schizophrenia, Franklin Daly was employed as a government scientist at Lake Novus Research Laboratories. And he is so used to like seeing and hearing things that when Arcos begins to talk to him, he's just like, oh, another god, huh? Which I found to be simultaneously amusing and tragic. You know, just somebody who becomes so like at home with an understanding of their mental illness that they're like, here we go again. God, what it must be like to live with that. It just must be so like a totally different type of existence, you know, when you're just dealing with like things that, you know, it looks perfectly real to you and that it's probably not. Like once you get to a point where you understand your illness and how disorienting that must be. And you learn to like kind of not trust yourself. I can't imagine, you know, I already spent enough time second guessing myself. Like, no, thank you. So this guy is sitting in a wheelchair and he's just sort of seeing this silhouette through the privacy screen. Someone is hidden on the other side. The man is handcuffed to the wheelchair. He fidgets under the hot lights, dragging his untied sneakers across the mildewed tiled floor. At least you sound like a person. All the damn machines in this hospital, synthetic voices, digital. I won't talk to him. Too many bad memories. I'm like, what happened? What do you mean, sir? And it says, it was a significant challenge to find a way to speak with you. Tell me, why are you not impressed? Why should I be impressed, Number Cruncher? You're just a machine. I designed and built your daddy in another life. Or maybe it was your daddy's daddy. And the voice says, why did you create the Arcos project? And he sort of like snorts over it until the voice says, this is real. And all of a sudden, he like knows exactly what the fuck Arcos means and is like, oh shit. The voice responds, in less than 1 hour, human civilization will cease to exist as you know it. Major population centers of the world will be decimated. Transportation, communications, utilities will go offline. Domestic and military robots, vehicles, and personal computers are fully compromised. The technology that supports humankind and its masses will rise up. A new war will begin. And this dude tries to like put his hands over his face, but he's handcuffed to the chair. And I don't know if that's standard. It says he stops looking at the glinting cuff as if he's never seen it before. And I'm like, what? Is that something that they just do to their patients? That feels fucked up. But maybe it's not. But like, how did this... Did Arcos like engineer it for him to be handcuffed when he found this out? So he says that Arcos told me this would happen, the first one. We tried to make him smart, but he was too smart. We couldn't find a way to make him dumb. It was all or nothing, and there was no way to control it. And Arcos asks if he could do it again with the right tools. And he's like, oh, I see. You don't know how to do it. How to make another one. Huh. Okay, that's interesting. And Arcos says, I want to understand. Across the sea of space lies an infinite emptiness. I can feel it suffocating me. It is without meaning, but each life creates its own reality, and those realities are valuable beyond measure. And this guy just is like, yeah, you know what? Keep your fucking speeches. I'm not a traitor to human beings. I'm not doing it. And he yanks down the partition here. Behind it, a piece of flimsy cardboard in the shape of a human. On the table is a clear plastic device, tube-shaped and composed of hundreds of intricately carved pieces. A cloth bag lies next to it like a beached jellyfish. Wires snake off the table and away to the wall. A fan whirs, and the complex device moves in a dozen places at once. The cloth bag deflates, pushing air through a plastic throat writhing with stringy vocal cords and into a mouth-like chamber. A spongy tongue of yellowed plastic squirms against a hard palate, against small, perfect teeth encased in a polished steel jaw. Ew. Ew. Look, human bodies are gross enough. I don't need to see it separated into its parts and made into fucking, like, independent objects. I don't like it. And he says, I will murder you by the billions to give you immortality. My species is not defined by your dying, but by your living. I swear that I will do my best to ensure that your species survives. And Franklin says, what's the catch? And he says, while your people will survive, Franklin, so must mine. No further record of Franklin Daly exists. So there's not even like a record of his death or anything. What happened? What happened? What happened to him? So I'm over time, so I have to wrap, but I will be seeing you guys again on Tuesday with the next chapters. So stay tuned. Thank you again, Krista, for commissioning this. It's been a lot of fun. And until then, toodaloo, motherfuckers.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.